Hey, Norfolk. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you to the Norfolk Library. So a lot of you all know me here, but for those that don't, I'm James O'Brien. I'm a local physical therapist. I work at Gear in Canaan, just right next door. I'm in the outpatient physical therapy department. I've been a physical therapist just about 10 years now, and my predominant focus has been in outpatient orthopedic physical therapy. In 2013, I became a board-certified orthopedic specialist through the American Physical Therapy Association. And so I got a little experience treating injuries, and mostly what I do is treat pain. So hopefully by the end of this evening, you'll have a better idea of what creates pain and a few little strategies of how to prevent it and perhaps reduce it. So a lot of times people ask me this name, Perfecting Movement. All right, why did you choose the name Perfecting Movement? It's not the best for marketing because a lot of people are like, I can't remember that. You know, that's a silly name. But I was really adamant. I said, I'm not going to change that. The name says it all. The goal is to perfect movement. So let's talk about high-level athletes. For any given activity, that high-level athlete is constantly trying to perfect his or her movement. Let's think about a golf swing. How much money do people pay to the golf pro to perfect that golf drive? Looks something like that, right? I'm not a golfer. I'm more of a mini golf man. Call me old-fashioned, all right? What they definitely don't look like is this. So that golfer attempts to perform perfect practice to perfect his movement. The swimmer in the pool doing the crawl, they know that they need to keep the crown of their head in the water so they can move forward in a level fashion. The second that head comes out of the water, it creates drag. Their head comes up, their feet comes down, it creates drag. It's inefficient. The elite marathon runners, the guys and gals who are winning these races, they all look the same. When they're running, they're landing with their foot beneath their hips, and they're in a nice, tall, proud posture. The people that aren't winning are hunched forward, landing like this. And in part, they're not winning because they're not running or moving efficiently. We think about a tennis player. When they serve the ball, they all more or less look the same, right? The ball goes up, they're actually loading the buttock here, and then they come down, all right? You don't see a lot of people, at least the good tennis players, serving like that, right? They can't hit the ball very hard, all right? And we can talk about this with a variety of different athletic endeavors, all right? There's a right and many wrong ways to move for that high-level activity. Now, if that's the case in sports, can't we extrapolate that and say that there's a right way to walk, a right way to bend, a right way to stand, a right way to get up from a chair, a right way to go up a step? And I would argue yes. And that correct way is the most efficient way. All right? So good movement, safe movement, using our anatomy, how it's designed to be used, is the most efficient way to move. You know, it's been argued that all of our anatomy, all of our body parts were designed with a very specific purpose. All right? And I would argue that we need to use that anatomy for a very specific purpose. And if we don't, it's harmful. Okay? Or if we use that anatomy, say, incorrectly, it's harmful. I always give the example. You don't want to use a saw to hammer a nail. It would damage the saw, right? It's not made for it. My body isn't meant to do this. My body isn't meant to bend forward with a rounded back and then to arch it upon return. It's not made for that. It's harmful. Children. Young children move well. Okay? So as a child learns to move, they start with crawling. All right? So as they're crawling on the ground, they're developing X amount of shoulder stability and strength, X amount of hip stability and strength, and they're engaging their core. And that's prepping them for standing. All right? So the young child, say a 1-year-old or right around there, when they're standing up, they're here, right? They're teetering back and forth. And they soon realize that this isn't the right thing to do. So what do? They start to steady out. And where do they steady out? In good posture, because it's efficient. all right? When they're learning to walk, they're like this, right? Moving about like this. It's adorable. Like my favorite video of my daughter is watching her walk like that. It's great. But they soon realize this isn't very efficient. So what do? They start narrowing their stride. They put their arms down, and they walk like me, all right? Smoothly forward, all right? That is, if they're barefoot, okay, as nature intended. Unfortunately, as we age, these natural fundamental movement patterns gradually erode, all right? And it leads to aches and pains. Good news, it gives guys like me a job and the opportunity to present a conversation like this, or a presentation like this, okay? So why does that happen? You know, I'm blaming our modern survival. So I want you guys to take a look at what you're all doing right now, except you guys, all right? We're all sitting, right? Sitting. I would argue that sitting is the number one reason I'm in business, okay? So let me grab this over here, okay? Should have had this prepared. Okay, so let's talk about what happens when we're sitting. So I'm going to work from the ground up, okay? Right now, my feet are out in front of me. My feet muscles, which support my arch, they're getting weak because they're not being used. If you don't use it, you lose it. My ankles are not being stretched, so my ankles get tight, all right? If my ankles get tight, I lose the ability to dorsiflex. This motion here is called dorsiflexion, all right? Which prohibits me from rolling over my foot correctly. If I can't roll over my foot correctly, as I walk, I'll spin off like this, with pointing my foot out to the side, for those that can't see me. That's a great way to make a bunion, and that's a great way to degenerate your knee, all right? Because the knee isn't meant to be twisted like that all the time. As I'm sitting, my hamstrings, the muscles in the back of my thighs here, are in a shortened position. In enough time, they'll actually shorten up. I need good hamstring flexibility to bend forward with a straight, elongated spine. If I lack flexibility in my hamstrings to do that, I'll bend forward and I'll be forced to round my back, predisposing me to low back pain. As I'm sitting here, if you notice by the wrinkle in the front of my pants, all right, they're in a shortened position. We'll pretend those are my hip flexors, okay? The hip flexors are the muscles which flex the hip like this. If those muscles are short, I physically can't stand up erect through my hips as I need to. So what will I do? I will compensate through my lower back, which will compress my spine and compromise my structural integrity in my back. That's a big problem. That's a major reason of why I treat low back pain. My abdominals, which help stabilize my spine in good alignment, get weak, all right? If they're weak, I can't control my spine, all right, which predisposes me to wear and tear. I'm forward flexed, like this right here. If I'm forward flexed and I get used to that, I get old fast. And if I'm forward flexed like this, I don't want to look at the floor, so I'll either compensate through my neck to generate neck pain, or I'll sway back through my lower back to generate low back pain. If I'm flexed forward, I can't use my shoulder correctly, it leads to shoulder pain. All right, so I say sitting is one of the main reasons why movement erodes over time. Number two is we spend the majority of our time on totally flat, man-made terrain. If we don't use it, we lose it. Our bodies were designed to go up and down hills, step up on rocks, climb, swim, jump, sprint, move over a variety of terrain, all right? And that challenges us, okay? Children, at least they run and play. They might be on flat terrain, but they're really using their bodies, okay? And by using their bodies, it keeps them strong, just like our hunting and gathering ancestors. They stayed strong, all right? But that lack of variety gradually leads to weaknesses. And lastly, I would argue that modern footwear is a big problem. Most footwear we see has an elevated heel, all right? If the heel is elevated, it pitches me forward. If I'm pitched forward, then I have to arch my back. So right away, that elevated heel will compromise the alignment of my spine, or the natural alignment of my spine, where it should be. If you look at this shoe, it's a little bit different, and there's a movement called Minimalist Footwear. This is from a company called Zero Shoes. I love this company. This shoe is flexible. It allows me to feel the ground, so I have good reflexes. All right, I have good balance because I can feel what's going on. It has a very wide toe box to allow my toes to display naturally. And yes, I have toe socks on. Not just because the ladies go wild for a man in toe socks, which they do. Look it up on the internet. But allows my toes to naturally splay. All right? So, if you haven't tried any minimalist footwear, I would encourage you to give it a shot. All right? And ease your way into it. But one of the great things about minimalist footwear is I learned right away that, ow, that hurts my heel. So what do I do instead? I walk softly. Sitting, a lack of variety in our terrain, and modern footwear. It gradually erodes good movement. Yeah, that's all right, no worries, no worries. I'm not judging you. I'm not judging you for your footwear, and you don't need to all stand up yet, okay? All right, so again, our design, good movement, enabled us to get to the top of the food chain and to stay there, all right? So interestingly, when they've done some observational research, probably doctors or someone, okay, I don't really have any studies to quote right now, but they've done plenty of observational research of people who live in more primitive societies. These individuals living in more primitive societies do very heavy work, all right? Lots of bending, lots of lifting, all right? Interestingly, the degenerative disc disease rates in their spines is way down, all right? You think with all that heavy lifting and bending and squatting, etc., their backs would be worn out, but they're not, all right? These people who often don't wear shoes, there's like no foot deformities. They don't get knee arthritis and they don't get hip arthritis. Interestingly, though, when we watch them move, they bend like this, they walk like this. So it can be assumed that whatever they're doing is correct. And it only seems logical because if they're a more primitive society, one would think that they're moving in a similar fashion to our hunting and gathering ancestors, using the anatomy for its purposeful design. So, when patients come to see me, what I like to think about first is, how are they moving incorrectly? All right? That's a software deficit. It might just be a software deficit, and I'll explain that in a moment. Then number two, I think about what's making them move incorrectly. All right? And I like to think of problems as either a software deficit or a hardware deficit. And let me explain those terms. So a software deficit, let's say I have all the flexibility and strength in the world, okay? But I walk like this, but I have all the strength and flexibility to walk like this. That would be a software deficit. That's poor motor programming, all right? A hardware deficit would be a lack of flexibility or a lack of strength. So a lot of people I work with lack strength in this muscle here, in their microphone, okay? Right here, okay? In what's called their posterior gluteus medius. So it's very common, you'll see people walk and they'll do something like this. All right, if you watch as I walk here, I lean a little to the right with every step. All right? If they're weak in that muscle, they might also have a pelvic drop, like this here. All right? Humans shouldn't move that way. That's not good movement. That individual is not physically strong enough to walk the right way. That's a hardware deficit. If I go back to my hamstring example before, if my hamstrings are tight due to a lack of flexibility, I physically can't bend forward like I'm doing right now, but instead I will have to round my back to bend forward. Those are hardware deficits. I like to think of a smartphone. Okay, we all mostly have smartphones nowadays. All right? It takes good software, all right, for the robots to be able to make the good hardware. All right? But you need good hardware to support good software. So you really need both. So once I started applying these principles to my patients, of saying, okay, here's our standard for movement, whether that be good sitting posture, standing posture, bending, walking, going up steps, getting out of a chair, all right? And having this standard that we need to follow, and then addressing that movement deficit through software fixes and hardware fixes, I had much better results. The other thing, they were long-lasting. I put my hands on my patients all the time to try and get things moving in the right direction. But if I've really done my job well, I've shown that patient, here's what you need to do, here's what you don't need to do, and what you need to stop doing, all right? So that they can truly self-manage. And one of my big goals, I'd like to say, and it doesn't always happen, but one of my biggest goals is if I treat someone with a problem, I don't ever want to see them again for that same problem. All right? I know it's been fixed, okay? They have the resources in store of how to fix themselves. And that was a lot of my motivation to create this website, which basically teaches people how to move better through just mindfulness and hardware fixes. Now what we'll do is we'll just go over a couple common examples of how to move better. All right? And we'll watch a short video or two. All right, so let's go over walking. All right? I'm going to show you all the things of what not to do, and then we'll watch a short video of what to do to quickly correct that. So I see people walking all the time, they're swaying side to side. As I sway side to side, that shuts off this buttock, predisposes me to knee pain, hip pain, low back pain. That's bad. Okay? I see people swaying back like this. That's also bad. Of course, I see people doing the overstriding. All these things are bad. Really, the essence of good walking is maintaining good spinal alignment. And I guess before we watch that video, I should just talk a little bit about the spine, because this is very important, all right? The spine is the foundation, which allows for good movement, all right? So this is Bob. He's dead, but he donated his body to Gear in the Norfolk Library for this evening only. Rest in peace. Okay, say thank you, Bob. Thank you, Rob. All right, so anyway, if you guys look here, these are the vertebra of the spine. And you can see they more or less just float on top of each other, right? They're not inherently stable. If we look here, for all those that can see okay, here you have the socket, the acetabulum it's called, for the ball and socket of the hip joint. It's deep, all right? It's round. It's designed not only for an immense amount of stability, but also mobility. This, inherently unstable. This, stable and mobile. Where do you think we should get most of our movement from? The hip. Right. Unfortunately, because we sit a lot, everyone do me a favor right now. Just bend side to side for those that are in the chair. Where do you guys think that movement's coming from? Your hips or your back? That's right, your spine. All right? Is it no wonder that we in Western societies have so much low back pain? When we sit, we're not getting the movement through our hips as nature intended. Those individuals in more primitive societies who are doing lots of squatting and bending and doing their work on the floor in like a cross-legged fashion, they're getting more movement through their hips, maintaining that good spinal alignment, just like a young child would. But unfortunately, we're getting a lot of that movement through through our spine while we're sitting here, and it leads to wear and tear. All right? So the core, all right, the foundation is spinal alignment, all right, for good walking. Now, I want to just do a little demonstration here. So can I just steal anyone? Anyone? Just come up here. Barbara, why don't you come up? Yep. So this is a simple little test that I'll do to my patients, and they'll have them do to me to show good posture. So this is a very common posture I see. It's called a swayback posture. All too common. This is where my hips come forward of my shoulders. All right? Barbara, what I want you to do is you're going to push down on my shoulders kind of hard here. I collapse. I'm not faking that. Do it again. Okay. I collapse. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my shoulders above my hips. I'm just going to simply align my spine. Okay. Let's do this, Barbara.
Get closer.
Down. Push straight down, Barbara. Down. Okay, so now she pulls me back there. But if Barbara pushes me straight down, I don't go anywhere. Now push me down, Barbara. I go back.
Yeah.
I collapse because I'm out of alignment. Thank you, Barbara. That's great. All right, so the essence really starts with good spinal alignment, okay? So in this video, I'm going to show you a quick little method of how to get into mostly good spinal alignment and then how to walk from there. It's about 2 to 3 minutes. I'm James O'Brien, and this is the simplified version of how to walk the right way. So the first thing you're going to need to do is you have to learn how to get into good standing posture. The quickest and easiest fix to get into good standing posture, in my opinion, is to have the chest pull up on the pubic bone. As my chest pulls up and my pubic bone goes up, that keeps my low back from overextending, but it straightens out my upper back. All right, so that's number one. Once you're there, stay there with a little bit of a tight core. Number 2 is take a folded towel and put it on top of your head. All right? Once it's on top of your head and you're in good posture, push up into that towel. All right? By pushing up into that towel, that's going to straighten out your spine and you're going to feel that your core naturally tightens up. Then just walk with the towel on your head, balanced, okay? In doing so, as you walk, it'll force you to take a short, quick stride. It will naturally force you to take a slightly more narrow stride. It'll prohibit you from leaning side to side, otherwise the towel comes off. All right? So this looks pretty silly, but it is an amazing fix. I often will cue my patients till the cows come home and say, do this, do that, blah, 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 and they're not really getting it. I said, okay, let's put a towel on top of your head. Let's push up into it. All of a sudden, it fixes 95% of their issues. All right? So simply get into good posture, put that towel up on top of your head, push up into it, and just practice your walking. All right? Once that towel's away, okay, once it's off your head, pretend it's there. That towel should always be there. And that way it's going to discourage you from leaning side to side, overstriding, or taking a wide step length. All right? So that is the simplified version of how to walk the right way. Good luck. Okay. So the next thing I want to go over, guys, is bending. All right? I treat a lot of low back pain. All right? So I had a revelation one day. Deadlifting. Deadlifting is a movement that weightlifters do. They lift really heavy weights without hurting their back. Okay? And it's like, how is that possible? Well, they've perfected their movement, right? So, and it's interestingly, it's the same way those individuals of more primitive societies bend. So we're all taught to bend the knees. And yeah, that's right. Okay, you want to bend the knees. And we're all taught to squat. But it's unrealistic. If I'm walking around and picking up sticks in the yard, it's unrealistic to squat, to do this. If I need to get down to a low sink, it doesn't make sense to squat. If I'm making my bed and I need to reach forward, it doesn't make sense. You can't squat everything, all right? And the reality is it's inefficient to constantly squat. So we really need to learn how to bend. So I see people bending all the time, and they're bending like this. Okay, their knees are straight, their back is arched. I see people bending with straight knees, and they're rounding their back. I see people bending their knees. And then they round their back forward, they extend their back, and they stand up straight. Unfortunately, it's rather rare I see people bend the right way, which is like this, with a nice elongated spine, my buttocks being driven backwards, and minimal forward movement or translation of my knees. All right? So this is a good bend. If I don't move my back, I don't hurt my back, right? So we want to maintain that good posture, that spinal alignment, and then bend forward through the hips. Yes.
Where is your weight on your feet?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. So, right down through the center of the arch, okay? So the arch is basically a shock absorber, or like a leaf spring, all right? So when we're really centered, our weight should be right down through the center of the arch, okay? Between the ball of the foot, between the heel of the foot, really just anterior, just forward of the ankle joint. So one of the things I'll tell myself if I'm doing a squat or a deadlift is pressure right down in front of the ankle. So often I'll see people bend, and I tell them take their butt back. And what they do is they're taking their butt like they're supposed to, and their toes lift a little bit. All right? They're off balance. Barbara, I'm going to steal you again. All right? What I want you to do, Barbara, is my weight is backwards right now. Just push my hand. I fall backwards. Okay? Okay? Now I'm going to put that weight where it's supposed to be. And really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bend forward a little bit more. Barbara, push me hard.
Yeah.
Now, Barbara, pull me.
Yeah.
All right? I'm stable, thanks. All right? Barbara's doing great work. Let's give a hand for Barbara. God bless America. Okay, so, and if you think about it, guys, where does the athlete stand, right? You know, the high-level athlete. They're not here waiting for the ball. They're not here waiting for the ball. They're not there waiting for the ball. They're here, right? Which is just midway to there, all right? So that's a nice athletic stance. The athlete, the high-level athlete, who really knows how to maintain that good spinal alignment and how to engage those glutes, buttocks, it's all in the hips. What controls the hips? The butt, right? Those butt muscles are on slight stretch, just like a rubber band. They are primed for action, ready to go, to be able to spring into action, whatever the activity. All right, does that answer your question? All right, rock on.
Brand of shoe you mentioned.
So a generic term to look up shoes I like would be, it's called Minimalist Footwear. This specific brand, however, is called Zero Shoes. I really love the shoe. And it's X-E-R-O. So Zero Shoes. So X-E-R-O. But this style of shoe is called Minimalist Footwear. And yeah, I encourage people to try it. I mean, all kids should be as barefoot as possible or in a shoe like this. You know, if you've had a shoe on your whole life with a high heel and lots of arch support, this could be a little bit of a stretch. You know, you have to work your way into it. But I'll tell you a quick little story. I ran into this guy at this running course, all right, learning about running technique. And we were talking, and I said, I'm from Norfolk, I'm James. And he's like, wait a minute, Norfolk, Connecticut? I said, yeah. He's like, I'm from Norfolk, Connecticut. I'm like, how old are you? He said, 32. I'm like, I'm 32. I'm like, how do I know this guy? He's like, are you James O'Brien? And I was like, you bet your ass I am. He's like, I remember you. I'm like, right. He's like, I'm Jacob. And I'm like, right. I got it. And I was like, oh, I kind of vaguely remember. Last time I saw this guy was when I was like 11 or 12. Fast forward, he's a medical doctor now. And he's a big believer in minimalist footwear. In their factories, they had all these rubber mats because they were standing all day. He was dealing with tons of foot pain, plantar fasciitis, you name it, just tons of people with pain. And he says, you know, I believe in this whole minimalist movement. All right? So he got the majority of his community to wear shoes like this. And he said the results were tremendous. He said, we don't know what to do with the rubber mats anymore. We need to get rid of them. So one thing I would say, they're relatively active people, they eat quite healthy, and they don't do a ton of sitting. All right, so I think they've got that going for them. But at least in his community, they've had excellent results. And he's a really motivated guy. And we've kept in touch after this clinic. We see each other a few times a year. And what he does is he photographs children's feet, okay, every year for the yearly physical. And one family is obstinate. They said, I don't want my kids in that type of footwear. And he's like, so be it. It's fine. But he says he can look at all the kids' feet in the photographs and say, that's the kid who's not using the shoes I recommend. You can just spot out that foot deformity. All the other kids, he's like, I don't know whose feet they are. You know, someone's. But that kid, you can see the difference. And I'll tell you, he keeps his daughters mostly barefoot, and it's amazing watching their feet work. It's like their big toe has a mind of its own. It just grabs the ground. And if you guys ever Google the term unshod foot, unshod means no shoe, you'll see that people who mostly go unshod, their foot almost looks like a hand, right? That's how the foot should be. Wide provides greater stability, right? So a minimalist shoe, to really be a good minimalist shoe, has a very wide toe box. You know, and if you could try the toe socks, the ladies might flock to you, but separates the toes nicely. So anyway, XCR, Zero Shoes. Yes?
When I grew up, we were always supposed to buy the good shoes that have nice arches in it.
Yeah. Marketing. Good marketing. So she said when she grew up, she was told, we need to buy the good shoes with good arch supports. All right? There's no science for that, guys, unfortunately. In fact, the American College of Sports Medicine now recommends a shoe like this. with minimal motion control, minimal arch support, and a nice roomy toe box with adequate flexibility. All right? And it's funny, you know, I've worn minimal shoes for a while, and I've done sandals, and I have some dress shoes, and I got these, and I've been really sticking with these guys, and I was hitting a punching bag the other night just because it makes me feel tough, and I need that from time to time. All right? And it was just interesting how I could develop power really well by just, you know, engaging that great toe. Because I can feel what I'm going from. So recently I've been wearing a lot of other workout shoes that have a little bit of cushion. So I don't really know if I'm on the outside of my foot, I'm on the inside of my foot, exactly what I'm doing. But I've been wearing these for, I don't know, a decent amount of time, and I was shocked when I hit the bag how much more force I could put into that bag, simply because I was right where I was supposed to be. So when I walk, I can feel myself coming over my big toe. As my butt wiggles a little bit, I'm using my glute to propel me forward. I'm not walking and rolling on the outside of my foot where my arch support and other shoes or my motion control would put me. Rather, I'm going right over that great toe, that big toe. It's big for a reason, right? And I can feel I'm doing that because I have the fitness in the shoe. Now, if you want to try these, I would say you can try them, but ease your way into it. Don't just go out and run a marathon with these. You're probably going to get hurt. And again, when I say try something like this, I encourage people to ease into it. You know, start with a shoe like this for like maybe an hour a day if you're on your feet. Work your way up the next day to maybe a little bit more and more and more. And always listen to the body. But there are sometimes hardware fixes we need to address, whether that's calf flexibility or some type of, you know, restriction that can help move things in the right direction. So it's definitely not a panacea. You know, my buddy had great results in his community, but again, I think they're a little bit of a different cohort. They eat a little bit healthier and they're a little bit more active to begin with. I was out visiting him not too long ago, and one of the coolest things I think I've ever seen in my life was this woman. She looked like she was 70 in her long skirts, you know, playing softball with like 12-year-olds and like 20-year-olds, and she slams the ball and starts running the bases. It's like, that's a tough chick. Yeah, pretty awesome. That's what I want. All right. Yes, sir.
I would just put in a pitch for the minimalist shoes too. I had a lot of foot pain and I hated running, but I came to a point in my life where I was like, I need to do something that's easy. And I started running. I can't remember the running that got me onto it, but I have similar pair of shoes to what James has, and it really helped me a lot. I had a lot of foot pain, you know, just like randomly standing at the sink in my house, you know, and I do stand a lot all day. But I made a transition to the minimalist shoe that James talking about, and it was pretty revolutionary for me. And just like James said, it, like, for no matter what your foot is, like my muscles compensated and changed my foot so that it was doing what it couldn't do when it was in that shoe that just formed it and held it tight. My foot just spread out and did its own thing. It was pretty revolutionary for me.
Yeah. Jones, you don't mind throwing a little pitch in there too. Thank you. Jones is my close friend. He also is a big minimalist guy.
Absolutely, about 10 years now, and
Yeah.
I can't wear anything with an arch.
Yeah.
Just can't.
So
My foot cramps up. It's,
being a true minimalist shoe, yeah, it has a wide toe box. And I was a little bit fearful buying this shoe because it didn't, like a lot of shoes look like this. So you can see, wow, that forefoot looks really wide. This shoe's kind of puffy on the sides. And I was a little bit deceived of how wide they were. But I do have a size that's probably just a slight bit long for me because my foot has gotten so fat from toe socks and minimalist footwear. The only thing I'm going to warn you is as you dive down this rabbit hole, your feet actually change shape. They get wider. But that's the way they're supposed to be. That's the way nature intended it. So, yes, Mary.
What you make flip-flops?
So flip-flops. So I love the idea that they allow the toes to splay. The only thing I don't love, to prevent them from flopping, what we do is we grasp like this, and that's a little bit unnatural, okay? So I like sandals a lot because they have that back strap, but flip-flops, I mean, I don't love them for that reason. Yeah, flip-flops, I don't despise them because I love the idea that they're flexible, they let the foot splay, but I don't love the idea that you have to grasp the front. So by simply throwing out a back strap, then I'm like A+. Yes, sir.
Do custom orthotics help you or not?
That's a great question, okay? And I would say it depends on the individual, but what I look at in an orthotic okay, I like to think that's a temporary measure. If I break a bone, I don't wear the cast forever. I let the injury heal, I take it off, and then I add gradual stress to it. So let's say I broke my shoulder, or close to my shoulder, my upper humerus here. I'm in maybe a cast or a sling, protecting it. That would be your orthotic. I get out of it, I can hardly move my arm. So I don't go out and try and do push-ups. I add a little bit of gradual stress to it. I start taking the orthotic out of my shoe throughout the day, all right, and see how it goes, all right? That's gradually adding more stress to it, ultimately trying to be rid of it. Because the thing is, guys, you know, again, you don't use it, you lose it. So we have an arch, it serves a purpose. It absorbs shock. The other thing is, when I walk, it's very subtle, guys, but when I walk, I go through pronation. Pronation has been like, has such a bad rep to it, but pronation is natural. When I pronate, remember I said before it's all about the buttocks, all right? What does the butt do? It externally rotates. That's one of the functions of the buttocks. When I step and I pronate, my leg will naturally internally rotate. It gives a little stretch to my buttocks and says, time to work, okay? And so by not having that pronation, it's actually prohibiting you from activating the buttocks correctly. Furthermore, your orthotic can pitch you out to the side, all right? So it's going to throw you off so you don't roll over your great toe as you're supposed to. So now I'll have patients see me, they'll have plantar fasciitis, okay? All right? And I'll tell them, you know, get an arch support. Use it for a little while. When you're better, get rid of it, okay? Wean your way off of it. So I like to think of them as a temporary measure. Now again, if you've been in orthotics your whole life, and like, dude, I don't need pain. My knees feel great, my hips feel great, my feet feel great. You might want to think twice, okay? Regardless of what's in your shoe, we've been spending a lot of time talking about shoes right now, all right? But regardless of what type of shoe you have on, you should still be mindful of your walking, right? Just because you have an orthotic on, or a minimalist piece of footwear on, you know, minimalist footwear was very popular for a while because people thought it was a panacea. But it's not. You know, good movement is a panacea, in my opinion. All right? So just because I have a minimalist shoe on, if I continue walking like this, that's a problem. All right? Minimalist footwear isn't going to fix that. I mean, it might discourage me from doing this because it hurts my foot some, and I can actually feel how to walk better in my minimalist footwear, but it doesn't make it happen. So I still need to be mindful of how I move. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Here's something that's interesting. They did some studies that people who just put shoes on like this, and their feet got stronger. So they looked at their arch muscles like, wow, they have hypertrophy, they have stronger feet, just by spending more time barefoot or in a barefoot style shoe, minimalist shoe. So a great way to make your feet stronger, you know, move well, walk well, so you don't overstress the system, spend a little bit more time barefoot. And I encourage people, go barefoot in the grass. Nothing better, right? Because then you get this constant variety. Watch out for the dog poo, but if you step in it, it's easier to wash off your foot than it is like getting out the flex of your foot. Right? Been there, done that. Okay. Next. Yes, sir.
You said that the shoes have a large toe box?
Yeah.
They come in widths?
A lot of minimalist footwears do not come in widths because they don't need to, because they're all that wide to begin with. I'm assuming I have probably a quadruple E, my feet. They've gotten really fat, okay?
I can see it.
Yeah, and so most shoes, Jones, come on up here for a second. So we all know Jones got some minimalist footwear. So if you look at Jones' shoe, same thing. These are super wide as well, okay? So most, you know, if they advertise they have a roomy toe box, the toe box is the front of the shoe. If they advertise they have a roomy toe box, typically they do. And so they don't need to have that wide of a, they don't need to come in widths because they're already pretty wide to begin with. I think that's it. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate it.